All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our kind of sixth section of the Cloud Bootcamp. So today we're going to be looking at topic 3D, which focuses on how do we compare migration approaches. So specifically, this looks at how do we compare and contrast cloud migration approaches. So we're going to start with cloud migration. So what is cloud migration? Like, how do we kind of like define it? So I would say that imagine you live in a house and you've decided to move to a new house, for example. The process of packing up your belongings and shifting them to the new place is the same as cloud migration. So when we're looking at the different types, we're looking at on-premise to cloud. So that's a transfer of on-premise resources to a cloud service provider. Now, this is the most common type of cloud migration. Now, going back into the example of us moving homes, think of on-premise to cloud as moving from a home that you've built and maintained, so on-premise, to a rented apartment that is in a high-rising building, for example, the cloud, where there might be more services in your new kind of flat, such as like a concierge. You might have security in your new place that you're renting. Maintenance, you don't have to worry about it because the building company manages all that. So all these other things that you would have had managed when you had, bought your own home and you had maintained it, you are now having to think about those when you're kind of like managing your house. But when you move to a rented place, for example, in a luxury apartment, for example, you're not thinking about security maintenance. These are being managed by a building association. So same way that when you move your services from on-premise to cloud, you no longer have to worry about the security of your data. You don't have to worry about the maintenance of the data. Why? Because this is being managed by the cloud service provider. Now, another type of cloud migration is cloud to cloud, which is the transfer of resources from one cloud service provider to another. So this might happen when an organization changes a cloud service provider. So maybe changing from AWS to Google Cloud, for example. Now, I would say, going back to the house example, that cloud to cloud is like moving from one rented apartment to another rented apartment in another building. So essentially, you're changing where you live, but both places provide the similar services. So you're moving from one luxury apartment to another luxury apartment. You're just changing locations. But the same things in regards to who manages, security and maintenance, those services still stay with the cloud service provider. And in the case of the properties, is still being managed by the property. Now, the final one is cloud to on-premise, which is like the reverse from on-premise to cloud. So that's a transfer of resources from a cloud service provider to on-premise deployment. So this may occur when a service or function does not operate as intended in a cloud deployment. So an example would be moving from a rented apartment back into your own home that you've built. So you might do this when you find that the services or the amenities of the apartment aren't meeting your expectations. So you go back to your old model of going back to your house where you are having to maintain everything within that building. Similar, you're removing your resources to on-premise where you have to maintain the security and the maintenance of your resources on-premise rather than it being on the cloud. But you only will do that if the expectations of using the cloud does not meet what you intended or the goals of the company or the strategies of the company. So there are now three, when we go to like phases of cloud migration, there are three phases. So you have planning. So this comes from data gathered through cloud assessment. So this is like scouting and researching from a new place to move to. You have to evaluate, going back into the example, you have to evaluate what you have, what you need, and the best way you want to move to the new house. I'm seeing something in the charts. Are we targeting on-premise to cloud or cloud to cloud? So I think we try to make it as loose as possible to make it quite general for you guys to decide. But I don't know, would people like a more defined, if it's more defined, then I'll definitely recommend the easier way to do it is to go from on-premise to cloud, because that's the most common, is what I'll suggest. But going back into three phases of cloud migration, you have implementation. Now, implementation is, going back to it's all about how do we transfer data, services, and servers to the cloud. So this is likely to be broken down into smaller phases. You wouldn't, migrate everything at the same time. You might decide to start with data and then certain services after seeing how the transfer to data kind of worked. And then you might move to services and then to servers. Now, I will say, going back, if you want to look at the analogy of moving houses, let's say it's moving day when we're looking at the implementation stage, you might need to move some items first, like your fragile items or your essentials. And then this is the same as, cloud migration, you move your essentials first. And in regards to how you're transporting your belongings, these are thinking about how do you safely transfer your data and services from the on-premise to the cloud, and what processes will kind of consist within that move. And the final one is optimization and security, which is ensuring that services are functioning as efficient and cost-effective as possible. So let's say, going back to our house analogy, after moving, you have to organize your things, right? You have to make sure the new place you're moving to is secure. You might even need to renovate the house. Let's say it's unfurnished house, you might need to furnish it to make it more efficient for you to live within that environment. It's a similar concept in cloud in regards that you might need to do a lot of tweaks and securing your deployment to ensure that process from on-premise to cloud, if we're using that example, is as smooth as possible. Similar, I would say that this is quite important when you're actually also migrating from one cloud provider to another cloud provider as well. Now, when we're thinking about the different migration types, there are 7. So a good way to think about it, if we look at the first 4, is to think about rehost is how do you lift and shift. Replatform. So when we're looking at rehost and how to lift and shift, it's like taking your furniture as from your old home and placing it in your new house without any changes, right? You're just lifting and shifting it to a different place. So let's think about data. You're taking the data that you would have had in premise and you're just moving it to the cloud. Same data, but it's just lift and shift. Now, when we're looking about replatform, that's lift, tinker, and shift. So it might be good to kind of think about the sounds to kind of help you remember. So I would say with replatform, it's similar to rehosting, but maybe when you move to your new place, you like repaint, or you might try to enhance, maybe clean some of the furniture before moving into the new place. So that's similar concept when we're thinking about replatform with lifting, tinker, and shift. When we're thinking about how do you refactor, that is rip and replace. So it's like, instead of moving your old furniture, you decide to redesign it entirely or buy new pieces to fit your home aesthetics. So that is a similar structure of refactor, of how do you rip and replace. And then when we're talking about repurpose, which is drop and shop, that is like, let's say you decide not to take certain items to your new home. Instead, you might decide to sell or donate some of the items and then buy new stuff in your to kind of put in your new place. So that's where you might drop and shop new things within the new structure. And then you have retire. So some items in your old home might no longer be needed. So you just decide to kind of discard them. Similar, some servers, some services, or some data might need to be retired. So you don't move it into your into the cloud, rather you retire that data. And then you have retain. So there are certain things you don't want to move immediately, so you decide to keep them at the old place for the time being. So it might mean like while you're moving your data, servers, and services into the cloud from on-premise, you might, as you're doing it in smaller phases, you might decide that actually you want to retain some things first on-premise before moving it to the cloud, because maybe you want to investigate certain things, you want to make sure it's okay. So there's an element of retain involved sometimes. And then finally is hybrid. So hybrid is like having both of your foot in two homes. So maybe you move certain items to your new place, which is a cloud, but you might, remain some stuff in your old home. Let's say you're staying with your parents and you're moving to a new house. You might have some of your old stuff at your parents' place, but in your new place, you might take some stuff with you. So the same concept works in this platform where you're thinking of on-premise, remaining some of your data and services in the cloud, as well as the on-premise. So you operate between both places. Sasha, I see you have your hands up.
Sorry, please could you just go over the difference between refactor and repurpose?
So refactor is rip and replace. So instead of moving your old furniture, you decide to redesign it or buy new pieces to fit your home aesthetic. Well, when you repurpose is when you decide to not take certain items and instead you might sell and donate them or then buy new stuff for your new place. So I'm going to go into this in more depth because I'm using the concept to kind of give you an analogy before going more into the technical part. But when you rip and replace is you might decide that certain servers, you might need to change them or you might need to replace them. While with repurpose, you're not even taking certain things into the cloud. Let's say you might decide there are different services now that you're moving into the cloud that you might want to do and some that you might want to discard. So with ripping and replace, it's more thinking, am I going to alter the data services on server or am I going to replace them? While with repurpose is, I'm going to drop, so I'm going to leave some services, data or servers and shop for new ones to replace it. Does that make sense, Sasha? Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
No worries. So we're now going to go into the technical parts because I think I've kind of explained the analogy first, but now we're not going to the technical parts. So when we're looking at rehosting, in that scenario, the application is cloud ready. So that means that the application is already compatible with the cloud. And number two, it's usually the fastest and easiest. Why? Because it's typically the most straightforward approach. So for example, you see here, original application, rehosting migration as a service. So you're just lifting and putting it there. There's nothing that you really need to change. For example, let's say that you have a video that you took on your phone and you want to put it on Google Drive, for example. You just would upload it and it's automatically there. So you're basically lifting it from your phone to your laptop and then to the online cloud, right? So because it's compatible, it's very easy for you to put your video from your phone into Google Drive because of the compatibility. And because of that, it's so straightforward and fast. And because of that, it's typically the most used in regards to, it's the fastest and easiest part of the cloud. Let me go back. Of the cloud migration type, because you don't really have to do anything. You're just lifting and dropping it there. The third point is that, there's a common misconception, and that is many people believe that all applications can be easily moved to the cloud without adjustment. And that's not true. Why? Because you have to think about whether it's compatible with that cloud. And not all applications are compatible. So, it might be a thing where you might need to think about, and if we're going back to previous things that we've learned, this is when you would do that internal research to see, okay, what do we already have in regards to our data? What do we have in our servers that might be compatible or might need different types of specific cloud because of the application that's being used, for example. And for example, if you're thinking of like fintech, they have certain standardizations that they need to follow, like PCI DSS and things like that. So they might need certain requirements when they are creating a contract with a cloud service provider to be able to have that compatibility and to be able to make sure that the standards that they have to adhere to is being met as well. So rehosting and shift is literally lift and shift. So it's the easiest and fastest way. When we go to the next one, which is replatforming, it's in this scenario, applications would require some modification or optimization before they can become cloud ready. So a good way to think about how this is different from rehosting, you already have that compatibility While with replatforming, you don't have that compatibility, or 100% of that compatibility. So because of that, some modifications are required for the application to be cloud ready. Now, the application remains fundamentally the same, but there might be some minor changes needed to be able to kind of fit in the cloud. So for example, a good way to think about it is for the Apple Store or Google Store, not all apps are accepted, for example. Maybe the Google Store might tell the developer that, you need to change X, Y, and Z before it would allow your application to be on the store. So it requires some modification before it can even be on that platform. So that's a good way to kind of think about the platforming if you want to think about an example where you have the original application, the developer, and the developer cannot move the application straight forward. It's not a rehosting situation. It does require certain modifications that the software as a service or the platform will then tell the developer that you need to do X, Y, and Z before it can actually be shifted. Now, when we're looking at refactoring, that is rip and replace. So 3 things that we need to think about is that application, in this scenario, the application will undergo significant change. So it might require a complete redesign. So in this case, you have the original application developer. The developer then re-architects the application to be able to put it on the cloud. So this can be resource intensive in the sense that in the sense of money and time. And also when we're looking at kind of the application, it's chosen when the current application does not meet the business needs or the cloud native features that are essential. So in this scenario, the 2 ways where it might require a whole reshift, a whole re-architect, a whole complete redesign is when it doesn't meet the business needs of the company or when it doesn't meet the cloud native features that are essential. So those are the 2 scenarios in which refactoring might take place when you're ripping and replacing. Looking at the chat, the 3 clouds are already, there are 3 clouds there already on the cloud to cloud, unless some apps need to be on premises. Okay. I don't know if that's a question. All right.
How about I ask a question about clarification with regards to the project? Are we treating it as on-premise to cloud or cloud to cloud? And I thought we were doing it cloud to cloud unless some apps were already on-premise. And for the report, for the potential third-party vendors, it would also be cloud to cloud or on-premise for they have like the
I don't know. For some,
You are breaking.
in
for some reason I can't hear you, but I think what
the
you
other businesses that they're investing in.
Okay, I didn't hear you for a sec.
They might.
Okay, I think maybe our internet. Okay, so what I think you're saying is that in the example, it's because it's a hybrid, there's going to be certain scenarios where you're doing cloud to cloud, and there are going to be certain scenarios when you're doing on-premise to cloud. And that is true. You guys might decide if it makes it easier that you want to focus on a section of the company that might require on-premise to cloud to just focus on one, if doing both of those are confusing to you, is what I would say. But Uhuma, if I didn't answer that properly, please put in the chat so that I can see it and then answer, but I couldn't hear you, unfortunately. Okay, so moving on with refactoring, I'm going to go a little bit fast, guys, only because I'm conscious of time and we still have 40 slides to go. So I'm going to be just a little bit faster. And then after the end, I will take questions. So I'm not ignoring your questions. I just want to rush through this part and then I'll answer questions. So when we're looking at the next one, because I think we finished this one, repurchasing. which is drop and shop. In this scenario, instead of adapting or migrating an old solution or a new product, the solution is purchased. So in this example, the current application cannot realistically be refactored for cloud use. And this situation normally occurs when you have legacy applications that are very old. And because they are old, they are not compatible for cloud. So in this scenario, the most cost-effective way would be to replace the application with one that is cloud ready. So you would retire the legacy application and then you would totally buy a new one that is cloud ready but still fulfills the same purpose. So when we're looking at retiring, it's pretty much the application is retired and not replaced at all. So in that case, you decide that actually this application is not really needed for the business, especially to where we are now. So you just completely retire the application. When you're retaining, so I would say also that when you're thinking about retiring, you have to determine whether the applications are no longer useful. And in that scenario, you would decommission them. Another thing is, with retiring, it can actually allow the company to have like a cost saving aspect in regards to they're able to save money by eliminating resources that aren't serving a beneficial purpose. And then when we're looking at retaining, that is all about the application is retained on premise and is not moved to the cloud. So there might be some cases where certain services or applications actually need to be on premise rather than on the cloud. So this decision also, I would say, might be temporary, depending on future migration, or might be permanent. But this depends on the specific business needs, and also the type of industry in which this scenario is in. When we're looking at hybrid, it's any mixture of these 6 migration strategies. So a good way to also remember when you're thinking about the 7 migration type is 7 of the migration types starts with an R. So it's 7 R's and a H, and the H is hybrid. So it's a mixture of any of the other 6. And essentially it combines the different migration strategies based on specific application and business requirements. And why this is good and will probably be the most suitable method for the reports that you guys are doing is because it allows flexibility and allows a phased approach to cloud migration. So a good way to think about this is, if I was thinking about a phased application, is to have a Gantt chart to say we're going to have 3 stages or 3 phase stages. Going back to what we're looking at, we're going to have 3 phases of cloud migration. In our planning stage, this is what we're going to do. In our implementation stage, this is what we're going to do. When we're thinking about optimization and security, this is what we're going to do. Now, when we're thinking about the cloud migration types or the hybrid, you might say at certain points, we might rehost, replatform, or refactor this. In other cases, we might repurpose. We might actually need to retire this because these are potential legacy applications that we need to consider. We might also need to retain this. Maybe particular data, especially within the fintech industry, might require it to be on premise at a very secure location, as well as protecting certain data that might be integral to the business, and then only having some other data, maybe in regards to transaction prices, how much investment, return of investment figures and things like that might then be more on the cloud, for example. So these are things that you need to consider, especially when thinking about the standardization as to how regulations play a part in fintech and what data need to be secured heavily. Now, I will say that, when we're looking at phase migration, it's extremely important. Why? Because phase migration is like relocating to a busy hospital. You can't move all the patients in the department at once. Instead, you need to start with the non-critical areas first, and then you eventually move to the more critical ones. So in that case, the critical kind of resources would be the last, while the non-critical is what you would move first, because you want to be able to use that as a lesson learned. As we're migrating this, what are we learning from the situation? And there are general steps that I'm going to discuss. When we have the discovery of resources, this is you understanding and listing out all the current services and applications and data that might be migrated to the cloud. So you have to think about, okay, what are the current resources that currently exist within this organization? Then the second thing is you then need to think about the suitability of resources for cloud deployment. Now, I will say with the report, we're not asking you to migrate the cloud. We're asking you to create a plan for them to migrate the cloud. So the second part is you thinking about suitability of resources for cloud deployment. So in this scenario, you are assessing which resources can be directly shifted to the cloud and which resources would need to be adjusted because you're not suited at this moment for migration. Then the third part you want to be doing is mapping applications and services to cloud solutions. So you need to decide where cloud service or solution matches the requirement for each application or service identified in the discovery phase, which was phase 1 right here. And then from there, we're now looking at migration of services and applications to the cloud. Now, in this scenario, you want to transfer the resources from on-premise infrastructure to the cloud using, and then this is where the migration methods will come in, using the different migration methods that are in place. And then the final one is operational support of cloud services. Now, this is when you monitor, manage, and you maintain the application and services in their new cloud environment. So in this scenario, you are addressing any issues and ensuring that there's a seamless operation. But you're already doing that because you've been doing a phase migration from focusing first on non-critical resources and then slowly moving to more of the critical resources that need to be migrated to cloud. So looking at the phase migration step, I will say is that it has to be self-contained, and you also have to think about have to ensure that cloud ready applications are moved first. So you start the migration with applications that are already designed to work in a cloud environment and do not depend on other apps that are not migrating already. Then when we're thinking about applications, so this is application that must be reformed, replatformed, or re-architected or moved later. So this is applications that need minor or major modifications to fit the cloud environment. And these tend to be migrated after the cloud-ready ones. So first, you start with migrating the cloud-ready applications. Then the second phase is you thinking of, okay, which applications do I need to maybe replatform or redesign? And then you will then create those modifications and then move them to the cloud. And the third one is your mission critical applications. And this is pretty much applications that are moved later and is ensuring that the migration process has been tested. So this would probably be to ensure your business continuity and mitigate risk. You would migrate your crucial applications only after gaining experience from migrating the earlier phases, so the cloud ready ones, and then the replatforms or re-architectured applications. So once you focus on those ones, the most critical applications will then be the last applications that are moved, that are migrated at the end. So I will say that you have to test each applications. You have to test them after it's migrated. Why? Because of that lesson learned. You need to be able to learn the lesson to then think, okay, how can I improve it as the phase goes on? Because what you want to do with starting with the non-critical applications is that you want to be able to get to a stage where you have enough experience when you're handling the mission critical applications that you'll be able to ensure that the process the cloud migration process is a lot smoother. So once an application is in the cloud, you have to rigorously test it to ensure 3 things. You want to test its functionality, its performance, and its security. I will say that, one good thing to remember about phased migration is that it's all about risk management and ensuring that smooth transition. So you want to be able to be thinking, okay, I need to create a risk management structure for this migration. So like I said, in regards to the example of moving a hospital, it's all about having that balancing act between speed, safety, and then that's where the project management skill is very, very important when you're actually thinking about this, where you're able to plan it in a way that the risk management is there. You're able to learn your lesson by focusing on the non-critical applications first. And you're being able to do that balancing act between the speed in which you need to migrate everything and also the safety to ensure that that functionality, performance, and security for all the cloud applications, data, and servers are being considered at each step of the migration. So a recap of everything discussed.
You got more.
A recap of everything discussed is that there are 3 migration types. You have your on-premise. Chineri, do you want to say anything? Okay. There are three types of migration types. So you have your on-premise to cloud, your cloud to cloud, and then your cloud to on-premise. And then when we're thinking about the 7 different migration strategies, there are 6 R's and 1 H. So the first R is rehosting, then you have replatforming, refactoring, repurchasing, retiring, retaining, and then the hybrid version. But I will say that a lot of companies operate within the hybrid section. Now, I'm conscious of time, so what I think we'll do is maybe discuss this. Discuss one, so maybe spend 3 minutes discussing this, and then I will go through the questions and answers for the next 4 pages, and then we'll move to the next stage, which is going to be quite information heavy, I'm not gonna lie. So one of the stakeholders in your organization approaches you with a concern regarding his department's cloud deployment. The department was one of the early adopters of cloud technology and has a cloud solution deployed in a different cloud with a different cloud service provider than the one of the organization has chosen. He asks if there's a way to migrate the cloud service provider chosen by the organization He asks if there's a way to migrate the cloud service provider chosen by the organization. What do you suggest? In this case, the answer would be cloud to cloud. Why? Because they've already had some cloud solution deployed from a different cloud that they now want to migrate to the cloud that has been chosen by the organization. In this case, the concerns that you would need to consider with a cloud to cloud migration is, number one, going back to the discussions that we looked at last week on contracts. So you have to check whether there is a vendor lock-in. So in regards to if you move to a different cloud, maybe there are certain services that might not be used. The same example I use of, let's say you had an Apple iPhone, a Mac, an Apple Watch, because you're from the same organization, it's all going to kind of work seamlessly. But let's say you get an Android phone, you won't be able to use your Apple Watch with your Android phone, or you won't be able to effectively even use your Android phone with your Mac. That might be the same issue. There might be certain services and features that you might lose because you have decided to go to a different vendor. And that's where you have the thing of a vendor lock-in. But to answer this question, cloud migration would be possible. It's just that you have to think about the features and the other elements, functionalities that you might lose by changing your cloud service provider. And that's because of the vendor lock-in, which a lot of cloud providers do anyway, because they want to be able to keep their customers from going to other cloud providers. Now, which of the following describes a lift and shift? Especially when looking at cloud provider. Again, going back to the example that we had with the lift and shift, this would be when actually, what is the answer? Because I think they have 4, so I can ask this question. Which one do we think is the answer out of the 4 that's there?
C. C.
Okay. Yeah, you guys are right. It's when an application requires no modification and is cloud ready. Now, which of the following would describe retaining cloud migration? What do we think?
What, the first one?
Okay, someone says the first one. Okay, I see A on the chat.
B.
Yes. So what? I didn't hear the last person, so sorry.
A.
A. Okay. The answer is A. Is when the application is kept on the premise in a traditional deployment, and retaining, it could be that it needs to be permanently retained in on-premise, or it might be that actually for future cloud migration, that will be done at a later stage because it's a more critical operational application. So what about this one? Which of the following describes lift, tinker, and shift, or a replatforming cloud migration?
B.
Okay, I'm hearing B. Anyone else? Shade says B. And you guys are right. It is B, when the application requires some modifications. And then we're going to this one, which I think is the last one. Yes. Which of the following describes rip and replace or refactoring a cloud migration? Okay, I'm hearing it. So what was the last one? Sorry, I think I spoke over someone.
A.
Yes, the answer is A. You are all right. So it's when you have to re-architect for it to be cloud ready. And I think that rip and replace is a good way of, like, you have to restructure the whole thing. So we're now going to go into 3E, which I'm going to warn everyone is going to be quite information heavy. We're going to be looking at how do we identify benefits and solutions of cloud services. So how do we identify the benefits or solutions of utilizing cloud services? So when we're thinking about cloud natives, for example, there are 4 types. We have microservices, containers, cloud native application management, and development team. Now, I would say a good way to think about cloud native application is, imagine building a toy using Lego blocks, right? Each block or set of block has its own functionality and can be easily connected with other blocks. Why? Because it's versatile. You can use a Lego brick to build a house, to build a car. That's why kids love them. You can create different structures. Cloud native applications work in a similar way in regards to utilizing components such as microservices and containers that allows for 3 things: flexibility, scalability, and efficient management. So when we're thinking about microservice, I would say, think of microservice as individual, going back to the example, as individual Lego blocks, and each representing a small specific part of a toy. In this scenario, it would be each block would represent a different feature of the app, as you can see here. So it's small, simple, autonomous components of an application. So I would say that with this example, each of the block would handle a specific, so each of the block in this example, the microservice, will handle a specific task or business function. Now, when we're looking at the operating system and hardware, it is independent in the sense that, like, Lego blocks can fit with any other block, regardless of color or size. Similar, the operating system and hardware are independent, but can still fit with each other. Now, I will say it has its benefits. The first one is improved responsiveness. Why? Because with the Lego example, if a Lego block is replaced or updated, it doesn't impact the entire toy structure. And that's the same thing. If a microservice is removed or updated, it does not affect the entire structure of the application. Another thing is improved scalability. So you can add, with a Lego block, you can add more blocks to make the toy bigger, or you can remove the blocks to make the toy smaller. So you can, similar to this, you can scale the microservices based on demand. And remember kind of the elasticity, if we're going back into the different characteristics of a cloud, it changes based on the demand. And then thirdly, it improves agility in regards to, if you want to modify a part of your toy, you can either replace it or just adjust a specific Lego block. Similarly, with microservices, you can quickly update, it can be quickly updated without affecting the entire application. And why? Because of the operating system and hardware is independent as well. Now, when we're going into the second one, which is containers. So in this, we're looking, I would say a different way to actually think about how containers differs from microservices is that microservices are individual Lego blocks, but containers are like the storage boxes that ensure that each type of the block is isolated, yet they can be easily assessed and used when building. So think of like the microservices as Lego blocks, but the container is like the storage box where you put all the Lego blocks in, right? So it holds all the Lego blocks, and you can take the blocks and kind of play with it when you need to, but you could put it back in the storage when you need to. So containers are like visualization at an operating system layer, which is also seen as, when you see the word operating systems, sometimes the acronym OS can be used in place of that. Now, unlike traditional virtual machines that emulate hardware, containers wrap up a piece of software in a complete file system with everything it needs to run. So that's one way to think about it. And also, a good kind of characteristics is that the operating system is used by multiple isolated applications. It's quickly deployed, and also you can scale up your web applications. So I'll say that because multiple containers can share the same operating system, but run isolated processes, it means that there's an efficient use of system resource. Now, the benefits, I would say, of containers are that the quick deployment and scaling. So just as easy it is as to like pick up a Lego block from your storage box and start building, containers allow for a quick deployment of applications. Another benefit is your managed infrastructure. So major cloud providers like AWS and Azure, they handle their underlying infrastructure, letting developers to focus purely on the code, and they don't have to think about maintenance, security, and things like that, because the cloud providers already do those things. So because of that, they don't have to think about infrastructure. They just can focus on codes. And examples of containers are your Azure Container Services and your Dockers as well. So moving on now to containers. So this is kind of like another example of a container. As you can see, you have your different applications. So remember what I said is that multiple containers can share the same operating system here, but these applications are like your Lego blocks. And because of that, they can have a quick deployment, because the container allows for a quick deployment of applications. Why? Because they run isolated processes, but they share the same operating systems. So your operating system is here, containers here, but you can have different containers like going more on top, and then you have your different applications that are within it, just like a Lego block. I would say when thinking about cloud native application management, cloud native application, they utilize a continuous delivery lifecycle. I would say one thing is that, especially in tech and cybersecurity, we love a good lifecycle. Now, here with this two life cycles, you have your dev and you have your ops. So sometimes you hear the word DevOps. Now within dev, you have create, plan, package, verify, create. That's a dev. And then in ops, you have release, configure, and monitor. But when you combine those two together, you're able to have a development life cycle that's managed by a DevOps system. So I would say that when we're thinking about cloud native applications, going back into our analogy of Lego blocks, when building your Lego blocks, you might have a guidebook that recommends different stages, sections to build. And instead of waiting to complete the entire structure, you might want to test each section as you go. So that same mindset of testing applies here, because it asks you to have an iterative approach, which is similar to a continuous delivery lifecycle of cloud native application. So you're continuously going through these process. You're continuously creating iterations of that kind of your cloud native application to manage it. I would say the key characteristics of a cloud native application management is, number one, the continuous delivery lifecycle. So applications are developed, tested, and deployed in short and consistent cycles. And the second thing is DevOps management, which is the example here. And that is the entire development lifecycles from writing your code to deployment is managed under a unified DevOps approach, ensuring a smooth transition between those stages, between development and operations, which is why you have DevOps. Now, I will say that in comparison to traditional apps often have like major version updates where significant changes are rolled out all at once. So it's like waiting to unveil the completed Lego masterpiece. However, with cloud native apps, it's like consistently tweaking and showing off the evolving Lego structure. So it's different. I will say, because it can be quite confusing, especially if you don't have a technical background, is that cloud native applications represent a paradigm shift in how applications are built, developed, and managed. And this is because by embracing components like microservices and containers and adopting that iterative development life cycles, it allows you to have agility, scalability, and responsiveness, making this the ideal for kind of like the dynamic needs of today's digital world, which is constantly changing and constantly requiring that iterative process. Now, when we're thinking about development team, we live in a very technological landscape, and development teams are like a ship's crew, for example, navigating different waters. There are a couple of things that you will need to think about when you have your development team. One is you need to reassess what your current practices are. So the teams will need to evaluate what is their existing methods and tools on a regular basis. You need to think about what are the outdated practices that might actually hinder our efficiency and innovation. And you then need to think about, as a team, do we need to embrace new methodologies like agile, DevOps structure that can foster a faster development lifecycle and better collaboration between different teams? The second thing is you might need to think about technical skills that may need to be updated, right? So the tech world is fluid. There's constantly new languages, constantly new platforms, and constantly new tools emerging continuously. So there might need to be regular training sessions, workshop, and courses that can help teams stay up to date. So this can look like investing in a new skill development that boosts your team's confidence and product quality as well. Now, I would say a good example when thinking about skills, I will just change what you can see. Let me know if you can you now see the other page? Let me know. Give me thumbs up. It should say Microsoft Azure. Can everyone see it? Okay, I'm seeing thumbs up. So
Yes.
thank you, Kemi. So these are some of the skills that you might, need. You might tell your team that actually, since we're using Azure, you might need to get a certification such as the Microsoft Azure Developer Associate. Now, if you can see like to be proficient in Azure, you need these certain skills. You need to be proficient in SDK, in data storage options, in data connections, in APIs, app authentication and authorization, and compute and container deployment, as well as the debugging. So it's already telling you the skills that you need to entail if you want to utilize the Azure platform. So let's say you're having a cloud migration. You have to think, does my development team actually have the skills needed for us to migrate into Microsoft Azure? And then if they don't, what kind of training that the cloud service provider kind of provides can be utilized to be able to, I'll just stop my video because I think you guys can't see me because it's getting dark, that they might need to utilize to be able to improve their proficiency. So that is one thing that you might need to think about. I think another example, looking at Amazon, they have training just for development teams, and it tells you step by step, and it provides you a guide on how to utilize. So things from getting started, introduction to serverless development, and other elements. So what I will say is, especially when it comes to development team, is that the cloud service providers will be providing training. So you might need to consider when planning your cloud migration as to what type of technical skills that might need to be updated. And yes, and Sasha said, AWS has a lot of free guides for learning about cloud, which might be useful for everyone as well, as you guys are learning about cloud essentials. So when we're looking at data analytics, I'll say data analytics is like using a telescope to understand the stars is a great analogy. And this lens that you use to kind of understand the stars, which in my mind would be data, have different lenses. And these lenses could be machine learning, it could be AI, or big data. And these different lenses allows us to discern patterns, to make predictions, and to gain insights. Now, when we're looking at data analytics, it's three parts: machine learning, artificial intelligence, and big data. Now, when we are looking at machine learning, I would say, these are servers. Oh, sorry, I see someone's coming in. From chatbots to consumer support to predicting fraudulent transactions, these technologies power various modern applications, right? We can do different services now because of machine learning and because of artificial intelligence. I think the biggest one we're thinking about, the use of machine learning is, for example, ChatGPT, right? It allows you to get information because it's been able to store a wild millions and millions of data that can allow you to predict things. And I'll say that data analytics takes advantage of cloud elasticity and scaling. Why? Because organizations may use cloud service providers, own staff, rather than hiring an in-house staff. So before I go there, I will say that the benefits of machine learning and artificial intelligence within the cloud is that cloud offers an on-demand resource, allowing analytic operations to scale as needed. Also, many organizations leverage cloud providers' expertise, so tapping into their staff and pre-built services rather than building everything in-house. Again, going back into the previous point, because cloud service providers provide that infrastructure, companies don't have to worry about infrastructure anymore. And because they don't have to worry about infrastructure and maintenance so much, they can focus their resources on other things to better help the company. Now, when we're thinking about big data, I'll say actually before I go into big data, just give me a thumbs up. How many of you have, worked or know an organization that actively uses AI? Give me a thumbs up if you know. And second question is, what are these applications that you're aware of? Put in the chat. So I'll repeat that. The first question is, do you know any organizations that actively uses AI? And if you do, just give me a thumbs up. And I think the second question is applications that you may be aware of that actively uses AI. So I'm seeing on the chat, a lot of people are using ChatGPT. Yes. Power BI, for sure. Grammarly. Yes, now. Francis, I did work in AI, but as a student and not in the UK. And that's good. And I think it just goes to show as well that there's definitely going to be a rise in machine learning and artificial intelligence. And I would definitely say, as we all are learning about cloud, it's also important to actually think, okay, this certification is going to allow me to have a foundation understanding of cloud. How do I navigate my career? Understanding that machine learning and artificial intelligence is going to be important. How do I utilize expertise of machine learning and artificial intelligence within the cloud? So that's just something to think about. So when we're going to big data is handling, is defined by handling vast and varied data sets that traditional data processing systems cannot manage. So when we think about this, we think about aggregating data. So this is when information can be sourced from different places, each with its own format and structure. So examples of this would be consumer data from Microsoft SLQ server, sales record from MariaDB, contact information from a CMS, or inventory information from a legacy database. Now, I would say that the benefit of big data is that with the right tools and expertise, insights, massive insights, can be derived from big data, which can lead to better decision making, which is why a lot of companies you see today will say, hey, we are data driven. Data driven is because they are utilizing big data to be able to help them make more efficient and intelligent decision making, which allows them to be more tailored to their customer experience and innovative solutions to age-old problems or to company problems that they might be having as well. Now, when we are going into the next part, which is customer-facing services. So these are your subscription services and also subscription services for your customers. When we're thinking about, I would say that just to go back, in today's digital era, we have moved from the age of standalone bookstores to dynamic libraries with exclusive membership perks. So subscription services in the tech realm reflects the similar transformation. Why? Because it's offering continuous and customized experiences to users. So when we look at subscription services, I would say it's like, consider, you're subscribing to your monthly magazine. It could be music magazine, fashion magazine, art magazine. Each month you receive new content tailored to the publication's theme and focus. So this is similar to how digital subscription services work. They provide a continuous and often personalized content of service. So I would say the key features to this is that it can be used with digital marketing. So subscription models enable regular engagement, offering opportunities to market add-on services, updates, or relevant kind of products as well. So you would see that, let's say if you research, I don't know, I want to buy a new couch, for example, you can then see that you might have a whole flood of advertising services on things from mortgage to homes to furniture stores. It's because it's personalizing this experience to you. The second thing is cloud service providers offer the infrastructure. So because they offer the infrastructure, like I said, rather than setting up and maintaining your own servers, cloud servers like AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud offer the needed infrastructure, so you don't have to worry about that. And the final one that is a key feature to subscription service is that personalization. Personalization. Why is that important? Because with data analytics and user profiling, subscription services can offer tailored experiences, so sending relevant content or offers to different segments of the audience. Now, when we move on to subscription services for your customers, this is all about the organization's relationship with a cloud service provider. That relationship is a subscription service. It's a subscription service, and within this, your cloud deployment can permit you to host subscription service with your own customers. So I would say that the key features to this is that by subscribing to a cloud service, your organization can harness the vast resources without that capital expenditure of owning all the hardware. Going back to the conversation that we had last week around the finances. And the second feature is that hosting subscription service. Using cloud deployments, businesses can now hold their own subscription platform on the cloud. And because of that, they can then offer their customers seamless experiences. Now, this is very empowering to the customers. Why? Because one, they can sign up, through cloud-based platform. Customers can sign up for services. They can enroll in specific subscriptions, tiers, packages. Secondly, it allows them to manage their own account, so they can update their payment information, their contact details, their service plans. They're able to manage that within the platform. And then finally, it empowers customers because they can choose how they want to receive information and what topics interest them by adjusting the privacy settings within these platforms. So I would say that subscription services, bolstered by cloud infrastructure, helps you to redefine the relationship that businesses have with their own customers, because by providing continuous value and allowing customers to manage their experience, companies can foster loyalty and ensure that reoccurring revenue and cater to the evolving needs of their customer base. As the digital landscape grows, so there's the potential of their subscription model shaping to the future of customers' engagement. So whatever new trends that are, taking place that they want to take advantage of, platforms can do that, and companies can do that because of that elasticity. They can change, they can modify quickly, they can respond to trends, to industry trends, and things like that will benefit, one, their customer engagement, but two, their profits also. So when we're going into evolving business services, so businesses today are no longer restricted to traditional office space, or stagnant technology. A lot of us work hybrid. There's been a lot of advancement like autonomous environments, Internet of Things. We're moving on to a world that is kind of, reflects a interconnected devices or self-regulating system type of world. And there are 5 things that we need to consider, especially when we're thinking about the future of businesses and how cloud plays a part. The first one is autonomous environments. The second one is Internet of Things. The third one is blockchain. And the fourth is cloud collaboration. And the last one is desktop management. So I would say before moving on to this, do you guys want us to take a 5 minutes break? Let me know in the chat, yes or no, or thumbs up if you think we should take a break, or do you think we should continue? Because I realize we've been going for an hour, 13 minutes. So if I said yes. Okay, anyone else? Okay, yes. All right, so we're going to take a 5 minutes break from 7:13, and we'll come back at let's come back at 7:20 p.m. and then we'll finish the rest of the session today. So I'm going to pause recording, and we'll begin again at 7:20 p.m. So we're talking about evolving businesses, and I think we talked about 5 different types, which are autonomous environments, Internet of Things, blockchain, cloud collaboration, and desktop management. So when we look at autonomous environments, think of like an advanced robot vacuum cleaner that doesn't only clean your house automatically, but also detects places that are dirtier dirtier spots, and focuses on them more often, also while avoiding obstacles areas in your house. So with this example, the key features that can be brought from that scenario is automated management. So certain routine tasks like server maintenance or software updates are handled automatically without human intervention. So there is an elimination of human role in routine management tasks. The second feature is there is an enhanced security. And the reason why is that by removing the possibility of human error in configuration, the security risk is significantly reduced. And the final kind of key feature is proactive threat management. So imagine the vacuum cleaner not just only avoiding obstacles, but also alerting you once it's found a broken pieces of glass, for example. This is very important, right? Because, if you have a child and the child steps on the glass, that is a hazard. And the same thing applies within the cloud system in the sense that in an automated environment, certain security concerns may be identified, and immediately steps will be taken in place to be able to mitigate those threats immediately. So the next example is Internet of Things. So I think it might be good, actually, before I go further. Does anyone use an IoT device in their day-to-day life? If you do, just give me a thumbs up. Or if you want to talk about how it's been helpful, let me know. Has anyone used an IoT device before? So maybe a smart thermostat, Alexa. Natasha says Alexa to play Despacito. Oh, that's cool.
Do we have, like in the hospitals as well, isn't it? The X-ray scanners and all things like that. Is that correct?
Yes, in certain examples, yes.
Yeah, we've got some scanners and things like that. Yeah, that we can call IoTs. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ife, for that example. Francis, do you have an example?
When I was in school in uni, undergraduate, I did something with my project partner. It was like a smart sprinkler with a microchip. So we like made a sprinkler that had soil moisture stuff, and then it just sprinkles when the soil is dry. It's just something. So
Okay.
it has a digital board too. So you see like it measures the soil moisture, and then you set it to a place where if it gets to that stage, it just sprinkles.
Okay. That sounds really, really cool, Francis. I like that.
Yeah.
I see that Afia also mentioned smart fridge. Oh, who doesn't love a smart fridge, especially when you're hungry? That's a good example.
How about the self-driving trains? Are they not like IoTs? I think so. Man, like infrastructures like that, they're like, well, just me thinking here. I think all the self-driving trains could be said to be under this.
Yes, I think definitely certain elements of that would be. I think definitely certain elements of that would be fair. Thank you for that example. And I've seen Alexa. Sasha said Alexa wants to join the bootcamp class. Funny joke.
You know, this thing, I've not seen it in the UK, but it's like this self-serving robot. It was so weird, I don't know, but it was interesting. You know, like those robots that serve you food instead of human beings. So when I was living abroad, they started using it to improve social distancing. And you just sit down and order with the robots, and they go get you your food.
That's really interesting. I think, you know, I definitely do think that the space of IoT, machine learning, is an incredible space. I look forward to see what the future would look like with technology, because I know like 15 years ago, we didn't even have apps. And now some of us can't live with certain apps. So it will be definitely interesting. I think that's a very interesting example, Francis. Thank you for sharing. I think to go back to Internet of Things now, there are two key features of an IoT device. The first one is that it has diverse sensors, but has a centralized processing. So this means that devices scattered globally can send data to centralized cloud systems for processing and analysis. And actually, a fun fact, for those who might want to research this further, is that IoT devices have been used to hack. So I think there was a case where somebody used a host of IoT devices to hack a particular device. And then there was like a legal complications as to who was responsible, the IoT device owners, the manufacturers, as well as the person who, you know, committed the hack. So it'll be interesting if you guys look at that particular case, which I think is out, like IoT devices used for hacking, just to kind of see the security element of how this might take into shape. And I'll say that, you know, IoTs take advantage of scalability, availability, and low capital expenditures because they have a pay-per-use model. Now, if we remember the scalability and the on-demand characteristic of a cloud, this is where it plays in. So the benefits of cloud for IoT is that the cloud offers scalability. So it handles vast data from multiple devices And the pay per use model means that you only pay for the computing power that you use. So again, increasing the efficiency. Now, examples of IoT devices are home automation. So it allows you, door alarms. Examples here are given where door alarms, doorbells, water leaks detectors, automated lighting, things like that enhances, one, the security of your home, but also the comfort because of this automated alarms, lighting, and even in some cases, climate control. Second element is agriculture. IoT is big in agriculture. Why? Because it allows, those within that industry to monitor the moisture in soil for efficient watering. It also allows farmers to be more precise. So it allows for precision in farming because of, the examples of like monitoring soil moisture to ensure the plants get the right amount of water. We also have animal husbandry, which, allows individuals or farmers to track their livestock, to monitor their health, and to ensure the well-being of the animals. So it allows farmers to do that. And the final one is greenhouses, right? So it allows, because of that climate control, it allows individuals within like the greenhouse space to adjust conditions automatically to ensure optimal growth for environments for plants. And examples here that you see is like your security camera, your smart TV, your smart thermostat. I think if everyone has a smart TV, you definitely have an IoT device. And in some cases, you should also read your privacy to see that, because I know that some smart TVs also record what you say as well. And video game systems as well. Now moving on to blockchain. Blockchain. Very, very interesting. So blockchain, so I would say beyond cryptocurrencies, is literally looking at how does a decentralized ledger technology, how does it revolutionize supply chains, contracts, and more? So I'll say that, when you think about blockchain is a digital ledger. So it's more like an old-fashioned accounting book. But instead of one person holding the book, there are multiple copies of this accounting book. And every time a transaction happens, everyone in the book gets updated. So if one person tries to alter a page or a block within the blockchain, everyone else's book will show that there is a discrepancy. So because of that, there is a data integrity in the system because of it records transactions. Now, when we look at the key features of a blockchain, there are 3. So, Chinere say passionate about blockchain. Oh, do you want to say a bit about blockchain, Chinere, before I move on? Just sharing your experience with it. Okay, I'll take that as a no. But that's fine. But it's good to know that you're passionate about it. So I'll say the key features of a oh, it's fine. You're noisy. Completely fine. The 3 key features of a blockchain is 1, data integrity. Like I said, every transaction is recorded, ensuring transparent and incorruptible record. The second one is cryptography. So each block of data references the previous one. So this creates an interlinked chain. It's like a puzzle pieces fitting together precisely in order where each piece references the previous one. So that's kind of a great way I'll describe cryptography. And then you have a decentralized storage. So instead of one centralized repository, data is stored across many systems, so making it resistant to failures or tampering because the storage is decentralized. And examples when you're going to think about, okay, what does blockchain look like in real life? First one is it happens, it can be utilized with bank transfers. Why? Because it ensures secure and traceable transactions between parties. It can be used within business auditing because it offers a transparent trail of big business actions and decisions. And it can then be used for record keeping. Why? Because it's keeping indisputable records for anything from property deeds to education qualifications. Now, when we're talking about cloud collaboration, so this is talking about working together anywhere, anytime. I think that's a great way to kind of think about it. And that is because cloud solutions provide a high degree of accessibility. You know, I think Chinere added that it uses hashing algorithms. So imagine a global library where you can access or even edit books simultaneously with one another. Regardless of where you are, cloud collaboration offers a similar experience for work documents and projects. So for example, with a Google Drive, if you have a Google Doc, for example, you can share that Google Doc with other people who can then edit that Google Doc at the same time, regardless of where they are in the world. And that is that kind of cloud collaboration, right, in real time. So it has two features. One is high accessibility, which I've spoken about, and that is with internet connection, you can access tools and documents from anywhere. And the second feature is that centralized storage. So all documents or tools are stored in a central location. So for example, this would be the cloud. The example I gave with Google Doc, it would be in the Google Drive, for example, which ensures that everyone gets the most up-to-date version of it. Now, other examples of this would be like Cisco WebEx or Zoom, for example. Why? Because of online meetings, webinars, collaborative session. Right now, we're on a Zoom platform. We are all logging in into this call from different places in the UK. But we can do that. Why? Because of cloud collaboration. And another good example is Citrix GoToMeeting, which is virtual conferencing, screen sharing, again, online meetings as well. So we're now going to go into desktop management. So desktop management, I would say that think of traditional desktop management like an individual bookshelf, for example, for each person, while your virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI, is like a central library where everyone accesses the same set of books. Now, in this example, there are two main key features of a desktop management. The first one is your decentralized versus centralized. Now, what does this mean? It means that traditional setups mean that every workstation might have slightly different settings or software versions, while with your virtual desktop infrastructure, everyone accesses a standard environment for everyone. Now, when we think about the second feature, that has to deal with your infrastructure requirements. So while your virtual desktop infrastructure is centralized and streamlines management, it requires two things. The first one is robust servers, and the second one is robust networks to support the user load. So those are two things. Two key features of desktop management: decentralized and centralized. When you're thinking about desktop, what is the difference between traditional and your virtual desktop infrastructure? And then you're thinking about your infrastructure requirements, right? So desktop management may be decentralized, where each workstation is secured, is configured and supported independently. So for example, each user has a computer where each local copy of Microsoft Windows, Microsoft Office, Outlook, and things like that. But with your VDI solution, although it may be hosted on-premise, it also offers a centralized installation, configuration, and support options. So this means your VDI would require significant infrastructure, but also your workstations in this scenario access the operating system application from the server. Now, I will say we're going to now move on to desktop as a service, DaaS. I know some of you guys might be tired of the many AASs, but desktop as a service basically offloads VDI hardware and support to the cloud service provider. So a good way to think about it is that DaaS is like renting a fully furnished luxury apartment. I know I keep using houses as an example. I just love houses and real estate. You get all the amenities, right, without the headache of maintenance, while paying only for the time you stay in your fully furnished apartment. That's the same thing as a DaaS. You're not thinking about maintenance. You're only paying for the amount of time you're staying in that luxury Airbnb, for example. Now, the key features of a desktop as a service is cloud-based option. What do we mean when we say it's a cloud-based option? It means that instead of owning and maintaining the hardware, it's all managed in the cloud by the service providers. Now, the second feature is it has a centralized administration. So it manages user desktop environments from a single dashboard, ensuring consistency and compliance, which is essential. Making sure that everyone is operating at the same compliance level and at the same kind of consistent level. They're using the same system and everything. And the final one is pay per use. So just like paying rent or paying for an MB for, like, let's say 5 days on a holiday, you only pay for the time that you're in that apartment. Similarly, you only pay for the desktop environments that you use. So the billing is pay per use. Now, examples of this is your Amazon workspace. So Amazon DaaS offering is scalable and has a pay-as-you-go model. Another example is your Microsoft virtual desktop. So in this example, it offers a virtual Windows environment on Azure, and your Citrix desktop and your VMware Horizon Cloud. These two are well-established names in the virtual development infrastructure and DaaS space because they offer a variety of virtual desktop solutions. So I will say that a good way to also think about it is that with the shift to remote work, there's an increase in online collaboration. And because of that, there's now a trend towards a desktop as a service model where desktop environments are hosted in the cloud rather than on-premise, because now people are working in a hybrid model. So I think it would be good to kind of see, like, has anyone experienced the use of DaaS within their workplace? Let's say you have like your own potential maybe virtual system that you have to like log it into when you're using your work computer. Has anyone experienced desktop as a service before, or is it everyone's first time? So Cassandra says we use Citrix. Okay, that's good. Anyone else? Okay, I will say that actually before I move, so AV says first time. So before I move, I forgot to show you guys two things, and then I'll jump back into the session. So I think a good way, if you guys want to, for those who might be interested in finding out more about Internet of Things, just going back a little bit, Google Cloud has a whole section on Internet of Things, and it tells you about how like they host their partner-led solutions, and it also shows you different companies that works in the space if you want to think about how IoT and within the cloud operates and which companies work within that space. Is definitely this. I will put this website on the chat. Let me refresh that. And then I also wanted to show you guys this page. So for those who might be new to it, Citrix actually gives an overview on virtual desktop infrastructure, what it's about on their website. So I'm also going to share that in case anyone's interested in kind of seeing, okay, what does desktop as a service look like in real world? This is a great example. Now moving on, I'm going to go back to the other page. I'm Microsoft Essential. Okay, perfect. So now moving on to the next stage, we're going to look at digital marketing. So digital marketing, I would say, is the cloud-powered megaphone, if I had to describe it. Why is it a cloud-powered megaphone? Because think of digital marketing like okay, this is a funny example, but think about it like a Swiss Army knife, right? It's a single tool with multiple functions ranging from emails to social media campaigns. So it has multiple uses. And the three things that you want to think about is that it aggregates many marketing services into one. So it aggregates emails, social media, personalized and relevant delivery, analytics, and things like that. It also has three key features. The first one is that it has a holistic approach. Why? Because it combines various marketing channels into a single cohesive strategy. The second thing that you have to think about when thinking about digital marketing is the analytics and personalization. Because with computing power, it's able to analyze vast amounts of data to tailor marketing campaigns to individual user preferences. So for example, with websites, it has analytics to show you, how many people viewed your website, how many people viewed a particular page, what page is your most viewed page, how long did each customer stay in one page. And by having an understanding of these information or these insights or these data or analytics, it then allows you to think, okay, I see everyone is going to a particular page within my website. Maybe I should, create a more seamless link from my homepage to that particular page to attract more customers, for example. So based on the analytics, you're able to make better intelligence, data-driven decisions, which are more effective for your customers because of that personalization element. You're able to modify your marketing campaign to individual preferences. And the last one is thinking about that pay-as-you-go cloud characteristics, that self-service elasticity. It's cost efficient because by leveraging your cloud elasticity and pay-as-you-go model, campaigns can either be scaled up or down based on demand without any upfront cost. Now, when we're looking at email, I would describe email marketing as the direct line. So consider email marketing like sending personalized invitation for an event. Each invite is tailored to the recipient, so ensuring better engagement and response. So think about it as, I would say like if you think about email marketing and its key features, I would say that it has three. The first one is a higher positive return on investment. So for every pound spent, email marketing often offers the highest returns compared to other marketing channels. It just does. The second thing is that it permits personalization and targeting. So you're able to segment your audience and send tailored messages from professional offers to newsletters. And the third feature is that when you're thinking about cloud management, many email marketing platforms are cloud-based. So they offer scalability, easy integration with other tools, and they reduce your need for on-premise infrastructure. Because instead of handwriting invitations and then posting it that you do traditionally, in a click of a button, you can email thousands of people by just utilizing cloud-based solutions. So if we're recapping what we've learned so far before we go to the questions, the first one is cloud native applications. They are like plants, specifically for, plants specifically bred for specific conditions. So they thrive in the best cloud environments and they leverage features like microservice and containers. So cloud native applications offers the best migration results. The second thing is that when you're thinking about data analytics in the cloud, think of the cloud as a powerful telescope, enhancing our ability to analyze a vast amount of data. So from big sets data to AI-driven insights, you're able to analyze these data through the use of clouds, data analytics in the cloud. And then when we're thinking about, business needs or evolving business services, newer tech trends are like the next generation of tools being built and being refined for modern businesses. So they often encompass automated environments, IoT, blockchain, and collaborative tools. And then also, we just spoke about DaaS, right? So DaaS streamlines the traditional desktop experience. So it offloads much of the heavy lifting to cloud providers and is the evolution of the traditional workstation set up for a more flexible and efficient model, but also allows for more flexible working, especially as we're changing our kind of future of work style. Now, when we're looking at digital marketing in the cloud, it combines tools and analytics. So digital marketing ensures that messages are tailored and campaigns are effective and businesses can reach their audience like never before. So in essence, the cloud is not just a technology, but I would argue that is a revolution. It allows businesses to reshape their strategies and also changes the very way that we work and also communicate. So we're now going to go into questions and answers. We have 11 minutes. So I'm briefly going to go through the last 5 pages. There is a reflection question, but I think this week I'm going to leave the reflective questions because I'm conscious of people's time, especially since I know that some of you guys might need more time for the report and video to record. In this example, the vice president of marketing at your organization has discovered that you are providing business analysis information to the cloud design team. She asks you how the cloud might apply to her marketing division and what suggestions would you make? Now, remember, we just talked about digital marketing. So digital marketing is an established aspect of the cloud. Why? Because a lot of cloud service providers provide services that helps you accurately target potential customers, deliver relevant and timely ads, and gather analytics to ensure marketing techniques that are being used efficiently. So the cloud allows for scalability. The cloud has like a pay-as-you-go licensing model. And again, think about what the characteristics of the 5 characteristics of clouds are. And it helps manages the marketing costs. So the cloud also provides many opportunities for collaboration between the marketing divisions and also the rest of the organization. When we're looking at the second question, discuss the ways you think that desktop as a service might be beneficial for your organization. A good way to answer this is to think, what are the benefits of desktop as a service, or DaaS? And the benefits are quicker deployment of end user workstations, consistent configuration of workstations, cost saving because it has a pay-as-you-go licensing as well. So you want to think about those three key benefits of actually using a DaaS and why it might benefit your organization. Then when we're looking at cloud solutions, discuss the way organizations might use Internet of Things technologies. So we all spoke a bit about, Internet of Things in our day-to-day life, right? And remember the key features that we talked about. We talked about sensors at remote locations. We talked about it being a component of a product sold, it allows ease with communication and collaboration with other employees. For those who have Alexa, think about what you use Alexa for and like the benefits of it as well. So by understanding the benefits of these key features, it can then allow you to see the benefits of it within the cloud space, but also the benefit that it will then definitely have for your organization. So which of the following, so this one you guys can answer, which of the following best describes a microservice? What do we think? Oh, I'm seeing stuff in the chat. Shall I say C? Anyone else? Okay. Shade, you're right. It's C. The key thing here is the small components that are independent but loosely coupled. And also think about how it links to containers as well. So another question, which of the following best describes containers? I think I give an example that kind of helps. What do we think? This is the last question of the day. A, B, C, D. Okay, shall I say C? Susie say C. C again. And you guys are right. So it uses the same operating system, but multiple isolated applications. So using again the example of the Lego blocks and the storage, that's a great way to think about containers. It's definitely worked for me. And then that's it for today. We're not going to do the reflections session, but thank you everyone for coming today. I'm going to pause, stop the recording now.